Well, that's right. It's live in talkSPORT tonight. We're going to look ahead to England against Wales with EE. Hal is with me. So too is Alex Crook. And so too, of course, is Simon. Hal, let's stick with you. When you look at it and we boil it all down, a win would guarantee England top spot. Wales still have a chance of reaching the last 16 despite losing to Iran on Friday. Sorry about that, Hal. To qualify, the Welsh have got to beat England and hope for a draw between the United States and Iran. Hal Robson-Kanu, look into my eyes and tell me, in all honesty, can Wales win this?
Wales can win this. Of course they can. You know, they've got players in that team who are, you know, top players who are playing in the Premier League, who have played at, you know, major tournaments before and played in big games as well. But it is, you know, going to be slim pickings, because I think from an English perspective, they don't want to limp into, you know, the knockout stages. And so I feel that Gareth Southgate will be, you know, making sure that they're as prepared as possible and as motivated as possible. You know, and we've heard some of that. I don't know if you guys have seen or heard what Gareth Southgate apparently is going to be doing, playing a certain video from a previous tournament of Welsh players celebrating as motivation in the build-up to the game.
Was that when Iceland beat England?
Correct,
and
yes.
And the Welsh boys were celebrating. In fact, you were one of them. Is that true?
I was in the room. Indeed. And as I said before, it wasn't necessarily about England losing. It was more the fact that Iceland, as a, you know, minnow nation.
It was
You'll believe anything.
Simon, hold on. No. So
it was all about England losing, Hal.
No, look, I think, as I said, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a difficult game for Wales, and you know, the performances that they've given so far have been really disappointing. And again, there's you know, you can make lots of different excuses in terms of, you know, the acclimatization, you know, the lack of preparation time, but it's the same for everyone. But the biggest thing for Wales is that, you know, they've relied heavily on, you know, the likes of Gareth Bale, the likes of Aaron Ramsey, you know, the likes of Joe Allen, who have delivered over, you know, for well over a decade now at this level for the nation. But they have just not quite been at it, you know, in this tournament.
You mentioned Bale and Ramsey. There's been a massive debate at the talkSPORT Hotel. It's been going on for what seems like about 300 years between Dean Saunders, former Welsh striker, and our Welsh commentator, Nigel Adley.
300 years.
Well, absolutely he could. Nigel Adley is adamant that neither Gareth Bale or Aaron Ramsey should start this game. They simply don't have the legs, in his opinion, to match up with this England team. Dean Saunders is saying absolute nonsense. You can't leave out Gareth Bale, because even though he's not as effective as he once was, he can give you that moment. Where do you stand?
Well, actually, Hal, that's a great point that Alex has brought up. Before you answer that, Rob Page was asked that in the build-up to this. What about Bale and Ramsey? Did they start?
Look, it's a big ask for anybody in this environment to go 4 days later from one competitive game to another. But like I said, I'm going to pick a team that I think will go out and compete against England, whether that's with them, without them. You'll have to wait tomorrow to find out that answer. Of course, I'm not going to give that away today, but if they don't start, can they come on and have an impact? That's always been my dilemma whenever you play Nations League games back home in Europe. Playing games in quick succession, I've always had that dilemma with them. If they start one game, can they start the next? So my thought process won't be any different to that. Whether they come on and have an impact, or whether they start and can last an hour, 90 minutes. You know, they are talented footballers, and okay, we're all getting a bit of criticism right now, and rightly so, because results ain't going our way and performances, and that's the industry we're in. We're big enough to take it. It's not a problem. We put our big boy pants on and we get on with it.
He's been listening to you, Simon. Big boy pants on. Hal Robson-Kanu, for a moment, be Rob Page. Do you start Bale and Ramsey?
Look, I think it's, you know, it's clearly coming to a time of, you know, passing the guard, and you sort of wonder, do you credit, you know, this generation and give them, you know, potentially a last hurrah in terms of the game, or do you look and try and give the younger players who the nation is now going to need for this next decade the opportunity to experience an international tournament in the World Cup and get game time and minutes under their belt? So it's a difficult one. I think for me personally, I think it's managed earlier on. So in terms of, you know, the game time, they've played, I think it's back-to-back 90 minutes. Both of them, maybe Rambo came off, but actually, you know, how can you manage it prior to this game? So they're actually maybe a little bit fresher coming into the game. Tactically, are we, you know, trying to make sure that we're not as reliant as you know, as we have been on the likes of Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey? And I think, you know, the players like Brennan Johnson, Dan James, Harry Wilson, Kiefer Moore, I think that's a strong quartet who I think if they had game time earlier on in the tournament, we wouldn't be as reliant on Bale and Ramsey. So, yeah, I think it's a tough ask to ask them to go 390 minutes in a week.
So that's a kind of no from you, that they both will start. Or is it?
It's
do they start and come off? Or do they not start and come on?
The other thing is as well, from an English perspective, England players and Gareth Southgate will not want them on the pitch because they can change the game in a moment.
Exactly.
So I think from that perspective, they're going you play them.
You agree with that, Alex?
Once upon a time.
They won't want them on the pitch.
Can we get that once upon a time from Simon Jordan, please? Because I'm
not convinced.
Once upon a time, and we're living in the past with these guys. Gareth Bale isn't fit enough. He made a decision to go and play in America. You're preparing for a tournament that your country has not featured in for 64 years. You have to question that decision.
Yep.
He's not impacted because he's not fit enough. Aaron Ramsey is the same. And you have to look at that and say, that's a tragedy for Wales, because at 33 years of age, we had this discussion last week on the sofa about people's physicality against their psychological approach, and Souness, I think, emphatically believes that some of the ideals behind why Gareth Bale is struggling to compete at this level at 33 years of age is not necessarily about physical element. It's more to do with his psychological approach and his approach to the scenario. So he is in a certain mindset, which will then manifest a certain feeling in him.
Yeah, I think they both start. If you ask me, I think they'll both.
But let's be honest, the point that Simon is making, Gareth Bale gave up on being a top-level footballer a long time ago. He gave up on hitting the highest level when he accepted just sitting on the bench at Real Madrid. He gave it up when he decided to go to the MLS. I think he gave up.
I agree.
And I think he would have been better served.
Give it up, Hal?
Better served going to Cardiff and playing in a more competitive division, playing Saturday, Tuesday in places, building himself up to be the best possible Gareth Bale.
With the best one in the world. You go to Cardiff after Real Madrid.
I understand the perspective, but actually, from an actuality, the MLS is a physical league, and so of course we're not talking. Have you played in the MLS?
No, but I put a team out in America and I watched the American teams.
So what I'm saying, I'm not saying. So from a quality perspective, there is a gap. From a physical perspective, the gap is very small, and you can see that because actually Gareth Bale has struggled physically, and it's not, again, I'm not saying that it's because of his approach, etc.
But in going to America, what was the driving force of Gareth Bale?
Look, so that's his own decision. So, you have to respect players' decisions. But actually,
it's money and lifestyle.
It's money and lifestyle.
Okay. But from an actual, but look, him going to America, MLS, I'm just letting you know, physically, it's as demanding as a lot of leagues in Europe. Right, so just before, it's not a farmers' league. It's not a, it is a very physically competitive league. And what did Gareth Bale need? He needed physical conditioning. And look, it hasn't happened. It hasn't manifested. But the intentions of going there actually aren't, in my opinion, what you're alluding to. You have to
look at the professionalism of this situation. And whilst Gareth Bale is entitled to a lot of legacy plaudits, this country, in its achievements from 2016 to where it is now, has predominantly been carried by the achievements of Gareth Bale. You get to a 64-year watershed moment by getting into a World Cup, and your key component part is Bale. He's 33 years of age, and he's playing in, I don't care what you say about the American leagues, I've watched enough of it, it's a mile off from where he needed to be prepared for a World Cup.
I agree.
It's a mile off. Now, whether he wanted to play in the doldrums of Cardiff in terms of the comparative wealth and lifestyle of Los Angeles is a different discussion. But the business end of a tournament was that Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey are not fit. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope they had the one last punch in them, like every fighter's last thing that goes is their punch. Because you want to see players of the calibre. I'm not overly interested in Ramsey. I'm more interested in Bale. But the calibre of Gareth Bale deserve to go out on a stage in a way where they're raging. And at this moment in time, they are not. And Wales as a unit suffer as a result of that because there isn't enough quality in that side to be able to supplement. So the argument that Nigel has about who you take out and who you put in, well, who do you put in then?
Exactly.